I want to start this video by telling you about my mom. A couple of years ago, she moved back to South Africa after living in Namibia for a couple of years. She was approaching retirement and wanted to be closer to her grandchildren. And almost before she'd even unpacked her bags, one of the first things she did was start looking for a home to buy. Not to rent, to buy. My first reaction was to ask her, why not consider renting rather than buying? But it wasn't really a question in her mind. That's just what you do. And I've been thinking about that ever since, because I think it perfectly captures something deeply South African about the way we feel about property. It's not just bricks and mortar, it's identity, it's belonging. It's something we were told from the time we were small that we had to have. So today, Cam and I want to have an honest conversation about renting versus buying a home in South Africa, because it's a conversation I've had with many clients over the years. Not to tell you what to do, but to give you the full picture, the numbers, the emotions, and the things that nobody puts into a calculator. Welcome to Family Wealth. Before we go any further, just to set expectations, everything we share today is for information and educational purposes only. It's not personal financial advice. Everyone's situation is different. Please speak to a qualified financial advisor before making any major decisions. Furthermore, the topic for today's conversation was inspired by a video I saw by Ben Felix, the Canadian finance YouTuber. We pasted a link to his specific video in the description below. Now, let's get into it. Before we get to a single number, I need to acknowledge something important. In South Africa, owning a home means something that goes deeper than a financial transaction. It's woven into how we think about success, about stability, and about being a proper adult who has their life together. You get a good job, you get married, you buy a house. That's the sequence. That's the plan. It's what our parents did, it's what their parents did, and somewhere along the way, it stopped being a choice and became an expectation.
And for many South Africans, it goes even deeper than that. For families where owning a property was not always possible, where having something in your name, something that's tangible and belongs to you and your children, is still a relatively new and hard-won reality. A home carries a tremendous amount of weight that goes far beyond square meters and monthly repayments. It means something. It represents something.
But here's what I've come to believe, because this topic is so emotional, so tied up in identity and family pride, and what the success is supposed to look like, we've stopped asking the financial question properly. We've allowed renting is throwing money away to become almost a cultural fact. Something people say at braais, at family gatherings, everyone nodding along, without anyone ever actually sitting down and running the real numbers.
Yes, Adri, and when we don't run the numbers, we risk making one of the biggest financial decisions of our lives based on inherited belief rather than honest reflection. So Adri, let's start with the question on a lot of people's minds. So when I rent, am I throwing money away?
Well, Cam, here's what people almost never say out loud. When you take out a bond, a very large portion of what you pay every month is actually money you will never see again. It goes to the banks as interest, it goes to the municipality as rates and taxes, and it goes to the insurance company. It goes toward a new geyser, a burst pipe, a roof that needs attention. These are all unrecoverable costs. Money out the door with no return. Just like rent. The difference is that rent arrives as one monthly number, while ownership costs arrive in different envelopes on different dates throughout the year. That makes them easier to ignore and doesn't make them smaller.
Now, when you pay rent, you receive something real in return. A roof over your head, safety and security for your family, a location close to your children's school, your workplace, your community. You get warmth and shelter and a place to build your life. That's not throwing money away. That's paying for something with genuine value.
Your bond payment does include a portion that reduces what you owe. That part builds equity, and that's real. But the interest, gone. The rates, gone. The maintenance, gone. The levy, gone.
And the honest comparison is this. Add up everything you'll spend as a homeowner that you will never recover, and compare it with everything you'll spend as a renter that you'll also never recover. When you do that properly, all in, no shortcuts, The answer is far less obvious than most people assume.
And to make that comparison concrete, let me show you exactly what those costs look like in practice, because this is where most people get the biggest surprise.
Now, before we get to the numbers, there's actually something I almost never have discussed honestly, and I think it might be the single most important thing in the entire video. Where you buy matters more than almost any other variable in this decision. More than the interest rate, more than your deposit size, more than your bond repayment term. The location, not just the city, but the specific town, the suburb, the street. These determine whether your home functions as a genuine wealth-building asset over time or as an expensive, illiquid commitment you struggle to exit when your life changes.
So let me give you some real South African contrast. I grew up in Naboomspruit, in Limpopo. It holds a piece of my heart. But if you bought a house there 20 years ago and you're sitting with it today, the capital growth you've experienced is a fraction of what someone in Pretoria East has seen, which is itself is a fraction of what someone in Stellenbosch or Cape Town southern suburbs has seen. The market is smaller, the buyer pool is much more limited, and in many smaller towns, selling when you actually need to sell is genuinely difficult, which means your so-called asset is far less liquid than you might think. That matters enormously when life happens and you need to move.
Now look at the other end of the spectrum. You look at the Boland, Stellenbosch, Paarl, Franschhoek, and the surrounding areas. They've all seen extraordinary demand over the last decade, driven not just by local buyers, but by semigration from Gauteng, and increasingly by international buyers choosing to base themselves in the Western Cape. Cape Town now carries the highest average residential property prices in the country by some distance. And for certain pockets, the Atlantic Seaboard, the southern suburbs, the winelands, demand has been remarkably resilient through difficult economic periods.
And then there are markets in between. Secondary cities, mining towns, agricultural towns, dormitory settlements outside metros, where the picture is far more mixed and far more dependent on what the local economy is doing today and what it will be doing in 10 years' time.
The point we really want you to absorb is this. There is no single South African property market. There are hundreds of micro markets, each with their own supply and demand, their own growth trajectory, their own risk profile, and their own opportunity. A home is not automatically a good investment simply because it's a home. Whether it grows in value, whether you can sell it when you need it, whether it outperforms alternative investments, all of that is determined almost entirely by where it sits and who wants to live there. So before you buy, anyway, ask yourself this question honestly. Is this a place people are actively choosing to move toward? Or is it a place where people are looking to leave?
All right, let's get into the financial mechanics. Numbers you can actually use. Let's make it concrete. So let's say you are looking at buying a 3-bedroom home in a town like Paarl for 3 million rand. When you own a home in South Africa, your unrecoverable costs fall into a few clear categories.
Rates and taxes. This goes into your municipality every year, and it's a non-negotiable. Depending on where you live and the value of your property, this runs typically between 0.5% and 1% of the property's value annually, and in some metros sits even higher. Municipal rates have been increasing consistently in recent years, often ahead of inflation. Unlike a rental agreement, you can't negotiate this down, and you can't opt out. To make this real, on a 3 million rand home in Paarl, you're looking at around 1,300 rand a month in rates and taxes, before a drop of water or a unit of electricity. And this cost moves in one direction, and it's not down.
Maintenance and repairs is the second one. The standard rule of thumb is around 1% of the property's value per year. In South Africa, I'd encourage you to budget closer to 1.5% to maybe even 2%. Load shedding accelerates wear on electrical systems, inverters, gates, motors, and geysers. Our climate is harder on buildings than people account for, especially if you live closer to the coast. And the general reality of aging infrastructure means unexpected costs arise more frequently than the brochure suggests. Budget conservatively here, or you'll be caught off guard.
Then bond interest. This is the big one. And it's the one most people dramatically underestimate. In the early years of a 25-year bond, the majority of the repayment is going to the bank as interest, not to building your equity. So South Africa's prime lending rate is currently sitting at about 10.25%. Even if you negotiate prime less than 75 basis points, based on a strong credit profile, the total interest you'll pay over the life of a long bond is a number that tends to shock people.
Let me make it concrete. So if we circle back to our initial example, you're buying a 3-bedroom home in Paarl for 3 million rand. You put down a 10% deposit, which means you need to finance around 2.7 million rand. Your bank rewards your good credit history with a rate of prime less 0.75% or 75 basis points. So you're borrowing at a rate of 9.5% in interest. Your payment period is 25 years. Your total amount repayable over that period is approximately 7.1 million rand. You borrowed 2.7 million rand, you will pay back 7.1 million rand. The difference, roughly 4.4 million rand, goes to the bank as interest. Not your equity, not your net worth, the bank.
Now, I'd encourage you to find any online amortization calculator, plug in your own numbers, and just have a look at what you'll pay back in total versus what you borrowed. That exercise alone changes how people think about this decision.
The opportunity cost of your deposit. This is the next thing we need to talk about. Your 300,000 rand deposit that you put down on your house is not free money. It has a cost. The return you gave up by not investing elsewhere. Over the last 15 years, the average South African home has grown at roughly 4 to 5% a year in nominal terms. That sounds reasonable, but once you subtract inflation, which has averaged at around 5% over that same period, the real inflation-adjusted return on the average South African home has been close to zero. In some years, and in many areas, it has actually been negative. Now, of course, this varies enormously depending on where you live. A home in the Atlantic seaboard or in Stellenbosch has told a very different story to one in certain parts of Johannesburg or the Northwest. But we're talking about averages here to illustrate a principle.
Now compare that to a globally diversified equity portfolio. Over the last decade, a South African investor tracking the S&P 500 through a rand-denominated index fund would have earned around 12 to 14% annually in rand terms, boosted partly by the rand's long-term weakening against the dollar. Now, it's important to factor in that number varies depending on the period you measure. So for purposes of this example, let's use a more conservative long-run nominal return of 10% a year. Subtract the same 5% inflation, and you're left with a real return of approximately 5% annually. Now, that number is not a guarantee. Returns do vary, years vary, but it gives us a fair apples-to-apples comparison. 0% on your home, 5% real on a globally diversified portfolio. That gap, compounded over 20 or 25 years, the same period as your bond, can make a profound difference to where you end up financially.
This is not us telling you not to buy a home, but it's us asking you to look honestly at the numbers that nobody showed us when we were growing up.
Now, putting it all together, the true cost of ownership. We start with two numbers. First, the opportunity cost of your deposit. So you put down 300,000, but that money could have been invested. Now, at our 5% real return benchmark, that's 15,000 a year you've given up. Second, the interest on your bond. The 2.7 million at 9.5% gives you approximately 256,500 in interest in the first year alone. Add these together and you get 271,500. Now that's money that leaves your hands every year and never comes back. Divide that by the purchase price of 3 million and you arrive at roughly 9%. That is your cost of capital.
Now, if we add the other unavoidable costs, interest and opportunity costs sitting at 9%, maintenance sitting at approximately 1%, rates and taxes, of course, depending on where you live, sitting at approximately 1%, that gives us a total of approximately 11%.
Now, here's the rule of thumb. Take the value of any property you're considering, multiply it by 11%. That gives you your estimated total annual unrecoverable costs of owning that property. And then divide that by 12, and you have your monthly threshold. Now, on our 3 million Paarl example, 3 million times 11% equals 330,000 per year, or 27,500 per month.
Now, that 27,500 Rand should be your line in the sand. If you're going to rent a genuinely comparable home in that same area for less than 27,500 Rand a month, and you will truly invest the difference, then renting may make better financial sense. If comparable rent in your area is higher than that amount, then buying starts to make the stronger financial case. Now, before we get hammered in the comments, this is by no means a perfect formula, but it is a useful starting point.
Now run that calculation for your own market, your own numbers, because the result looks completely different in the Boland versus a small town Naboomspruit in Limpopo, in a high demand Pretoria suburb versus a declining mining community. Location is not a detail, it is the whole story.
I want to pause here and be very direct about something. We don't want this video to feel like a lecture telling you not to buy a home. That's not what this is. There are real, powerful, deeply legitimate reasons to buy, and they deserve to be honored without apology. When you own your home, there's no landlord that can hand you a notice at the end of a 12-month lease because they've decided to sell, or because a family member wants to move in, or simply because they want a higher paying tenant. No one can increase your rent by 15 or 20% in a market where alternatives are scarce. You cannot be told that you need to find somewhere else for your children in 60 days because the owner's circumstances has changed. For families with children who are settled in school, who have friends in the street, who have roots in the community, that stability has genuine value that no spreadsheet can ever capture.
There's also the fear that deserves to be named directly. The prospect of reaching retirement age, still dependent on a landlord, still vulnerable to rent increases, still at the mercy of someone else's circumstances. A fully paid off home at retirement is an extraordinary financial position. No rent obligation eating into the pension. No landlord to negotiate with when you're older and more vulnerable. Just your space, yours outright, with the option to stay or to downscale and unlock capital to fund the retirement that you actually want. That security is worth something real, and any honest analysis has to account for it.
Owning your home also gives you the freedom to make the space entirely your own, to renovate, to knock down a wall, to build a garden you've always pictured, to create a home rather than simply occupying one.
And then there's the reality that a bond functions as a form of forced saving. And I think we should be honest about how valuable that is for many South African families. Every month, without any additional discipline required, a portion of your bond reduces your debt and increases your equity. For people who struggle to save consistently, and given the cost of living pressures in this country, that is most people at most ages of life. This is automatic, non-negotiable equity building. It's genuinely useful. Even if the pure financial math is not perfectly optimal, the behavioral outcome is real and should not be dismissed.
None of these things show up in a formula, but they matter deeply, and any honest conversation about this decision has to include them. On the other side, I want to make the case for renting clearly and without the apology it often gets in South African conversations, because renting still carries a stigma that it simply does not deserve. Renting offers something strategically and genuinely valuable: flexibility.
We live in a country and a world of rapid, unpredictable change. Job opportunities are moving, industries shift, relationships change, health changes. The ability to adjust your life when you need to without being anchored to a property that might take a year to sell in a slow market is real optionality. It has financial value even when you can't attach a precise number to it.
For younger South Africans especially, entering a working world that looks nothing like the one their parents knew, where remote work, entrepreneurship, career pivots, and immigration are all living possibilities, locking into a 25-year bond out of social expectation rather than genuine readiness is not wisdom. It's expensive conformity dressed up as responsibility.
And here's the financial reality I want you to genuinely sit with. If you are renting in a market where the numbers favor renting, where comparable properties rent for meaningfully below the 11% threshold we discussed earlier, and if you take the deposit that you didn't put into bricks, and the maintenance costs you're not carrying, and the rates account you are not funding, and you invest that money consistently and sensibly into a well-diversified global portfolio, the long-term wealth creation can potentially equal or even exceed what a homeowner achieves in the same period.
Now, this is not always and definitely not automatic. It depends on your specific market, your investment discipline, the property's actual appreciation, and the consistency of your investing. But it could be an absolutely realistic outcome. And pretending otherwise does a disservice to people who are making a careful, thoughtful, intentional choice to rent while building wealth through other means.
The condition that makes this work, and I'll say it again because it's really everything, is that the money you save must actually be invested. Renting while spending the difference on a nice car or more restaurants and a few extra holidays is just renting. The math only works, the wealth is only created if the surplus goes somewhere that compounds quietly and consistently over time.
Now, let's bring all of this together into something you can actually use. Here are 4 questions we believe every South African should answer honestly before making this decision.
Question 1. How long am I genuinely planning to stay? This requires real honesty, not optimistic guessing. The shorter your time horizon, the more strongly the numbers tend to favor renting. Transaction costs in South Africa are significant. There's transfer duty, bond registration and initiation fees, conveyancing costs on the way in, and then estate agent commission and legal costs when you eventually sell. These can add up to 8 to 10% of the property value across a full buying and selling cycle. You need meaningful time in the property just to break even on those costs alone before you've made a single rand of genuine profit. If there's a realistic chance you'll need or want to move within 5 years, you need to factor in that carefully before you make that commitment.
The second question is, what's the actual market I'm buying into? Not property in general, not South Africa broadly, the specific suburb, the specific town. Is the population growing or sinking? Is the local economy healthy, diverse, and expanding? Or dependent on a single employer or industry that could change? Are people actively choosing to move here, or are your potential neighbors quietly researching their options? The honest answer to this question will tell you more about whether your home will be an asset or a liability than any interest rate or deposit size ever could.
Question 3. Can I truly afford all of it? Not just the monthly bond repayment the bank approved you for. It's the rates, the levy, the maintenance reserve, the building insurance, the capital expenditure items like the geyser, the roof, the driveway. That will arrive in years 3 and 8 and 12, all without warning. A widely used guideline is that your total housing costs should ideally sit below 28 to 30% of your gross monthly income. And after covering all of that, you should still have room to save and invest. If you cannot do both, the property may simply be too expensive for your current position in life, regardless of what any bank is willing to lend you. The bank's job is to make money from lending. Your job is to build wealth for your family.
And that brings us to question 4. What would I actually do with the difference? This is the most uncomfortable question, but also the most important one. If you were to rent instead of buy, would you genuinely invest the deposit money and the monthly savings? Would you open a unit trust or a tax-free savings account and contribute to it every single month without fail? Or would that money quietly dissolve into day-to-day expenses, a slightly better car, a few more dinners out? There is no shame in knowing yourself clearly and honestly, but your answer to this question should genuinely influence your decisions. If you know in your heart that you will not invest the difference consistently, then the automatic equity building of a bond, imperfect as it is in pure financial terms, may actually serve your family's long-term wealth better than the theoretical superior strategy that you will never quite follow through on. I want to come back to my mom for a moment. She moved back to South Africa. She wanted to be near to her grandchildren, and almost immediately she started looking for a home to buy. And honestly, for her situation, her stage of life, her desire for permanence, her need for a stable base close to the family she'd missed while she was away, buying probably was the right call. The emotional case was strong, the numbers made sense for the area she was looking in, and having her own space in her own country after years of living somewhere else meant something that goes beyond any calculation I could show her on a screen.
But we want you and everyone watching to make the decision with full information, with open eyes, with an honest look at the real costs, a clear understanding of the market you're entering, and a genuine reckoning with your own financial position and your own behavioral tendencies. Not because someone told you that this is what you do at this stage of life, not because renting feels like failure and buying feels like success, but because you looked at your specific situation, your specific market, your specific family's needs, and you chose it with clarity.
Because here's the truth. The right answer in Stellenbosch is not the same as the right answer in Melbourne-Spruit. The right answer at 28 is not the same as the right answer at 50. And the right answer for someone with deep investment discipline is not the same as the right answer for someone who genuinely needs the structure of a bond to build any wealth at all.
Now, there's no universal answer. There's only your answer, made with honest numbers, a clear head, and a real understanding of what your family needs, not just today, but over the long arc of your financial life.
If this conversation helped you think about that more clearly, please share this video with someone in your life who is wrestling with the decision right now. And subscribe to the Family Wealth channel, because it's exactly the kind of conversations we are here to have. Honest, grounded South African, and always focused on what actually matters for the people you love. I'm Ardi Swart.
I'm Cam Sondlo.
This is Family Wealth. Keep investing into your future.